Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Kayla, and today I am really excited to be following my first ever sewing pattern. Hello, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. I'm so glad to have you here, whether old or new. Today I have a really exciting video, which might be shocking to some of you guys who know a little bit more about my sewing journey. So let's start from the beginning. So I started sewing when I was a tot, a tiny tot. I think I was in middle school or junior high. I don't know, I was very young, maybe like 10 or 11 years old when I got my first sewing kit and started sewing and doing things such as like cross stitching and embroidery. I've always been a crafty gal. I remember one year attempting to make myself a dress for Easter out of this pink sparkly cotton material that had butterflies all over it, and it was a disastrous fail. However, something inside of me told me to persist. Actually, I have an entire sketchbook that has all of my designs that I started drawing when I was in middle school, high school, and even into college. I drew some designs for clothing pieces. So fashion design, fashion creation has always been a lifelong passion of mine. As I've gotten older, particularly during the season of quarantine, I have been spending so much more time creating things. Actually, during quarantine, I've created myself like a me-made wardrobe. I've made 2 skirts, 2 tops, a dress, and today we are going to be making a tank top. I have this really gorgeous material. I just thought that this would be absolutely stunning for the fall. It's this really lovely camely brown colored plaid. So what I want to do is just make a very basic, very simple tank top. Now I do believe that this pattern calls for a knit, yes, and basically that just means it's a stretchier material. So think of like jersey knit. This is not that. This is a woven cotton. So because we're not using a knit, I do have a zipper that we're going to sew in place. This is a very simple pattern, and it is my first pattern I will ever be following. Despite the fact that I've made plenty of my own clothes at this point, like wearable clothes at this point, I've actually never followed a sewing pattern. So I picked this up at the local Walmart for $7 and change. Together, you and I are going to embark on the journey of creating a tank top. A very simple, very basic tank top. So if you guys are excited for the journey, stick around. But before we jump into this video, don't forget to go down below and hit the subscribe button. It's totally free, and I'll let you know when I upload new videos, which is every single Monday. Unless I have a crazy weekend, and then it will go up on a Wednesday. Yeah, so join the journey. I'm constantly creating new fashion related content, whether it be sewing or embroidery or creating clothing or buying clothing, thrifting, sustainability videos, lookbooks, hauls, the whole 9. So hop on board if you guys are interested in any of this type of content. I'd be very happy to have you join the family. Now, without further ado, let us get to sewing. So first things first, for this project, I just have this pattern here. I can put the name in the description box for you guys. Some fabric of your choice. I have about 1 yard and 7/8. Some either tracing paper, carbon paper, some sort of see-through paper, a marker of some sort. I'm just using a Crayola washable marker just in case it bleeds through the tracing paper, sewing scissors, and pins. I definitely do recommend reading the instructions before you embark on the journey of creating whatever garment that you're deciding to create. So I just sat down and read my instructions before laying out the pattern and figuring out which pieces I needed to trace. Once I felt like I at least partially understood what I was doing, I opened up these massive sheets of pattern and just tried to identify which pieces I needed. So I'm making garment letter F, and there were 2 sheets of pattern pieces in this packet, so I just needed to search around and figure out where the 4 pieces that we needed for this garment were. After rummaging through these massive pieces of basically tissue paper, I found the 4 pieces that I needed, so I took out some of my sewing rulers. I really do recommend using a ruler. This is one thing that I definitely did not do for all of the pieces, and it makes such a big difference. So I just found my sewing rulers and started tracing the pattern as precisely as I could, and I decided to go for a size large, but as you'll see at the end, it is quite a bit oversized, so I definitely could have gone for a size medium. So just make sure that you measure yourself, something I didn't do. I did skip that step, thinking on average I'm usually a large, so I'm just gonna go for it. But because this is meant for a knit fabric, it's meant for something that's gonna like be really drapey, and I'm using a woven cotton, so it's not the same at all. They have very different properties and react different ways. So just make sure you know what type of material you're using and that you measure yourself, especially if you are deviating. Always measure yourself, but especially if you're deviating from what the pattern recommends. One thing that I did when I traced out the second piece, I decided to pin the tracing paper onto the pattern, which made it so much easier because the tracing paper is sort of like sliding around a little bit, which can really mess up your pattern. So I do recommend pinning the tracing paper down to the pattern, the tissue paper pattern piece. And once I just have precisely marked everything out, I just make some notes on the pattern pieces so that I know which piece is what. So for example, right here, I'm just writing what number piece this is. I'm also writing how many times I need to cut this piece out, and then also just what exactly it is. So this is like a binding piece for the sleeve, I think, and this needs to be cut out twice, so I'm just making sure I'm writing that down, as well as making any arrows so I know which direction this piece needs to face if there is any directional need. Additionally, you should probably consider, while you're here already, which I ended up going back and doing this, writing the seam allowance on this pattern so that it's just easier, so you can just transfer the seam allowance from the pattern piece to your actual garment. So now that my pattern pieces are all cut out precisely, I'm just pinning the pattern down onto the fabric, and the fabric is actually folded over. So every pattern is different, but this pattern calls for your fabric to be folded in half, and that way, you know, like when you cut out a paper heart, you unfold it and it's a heart, but you only like really cut out one half of it, you know what I'm saying? So you're gonna be able to unfold this and have the whole front panel. So the fabric is folded in half, and I'm just pinning down the tissue paper or the tracing paper pattern onto the fabric, and then we're simply going to cut it out. And you're going to do that for all of the pattern pieces, and then of course not all of them need to be on a fold, so just keep that in mind. So for this garment, the front pattern piece and the back pattern piece need to be on a fold, and then the neck binding, which only needs to be cut out once, it does not need to be on a fold, and the sleeve binding, I just kept the fabric folded in half but didn't cut on the fold because you do need two of them, so you might as well just keep the fabric folded and cut once and get two pieces out of it. Okay, so before I take off the pattern, I just want to take my water soluble pen and on the back just write an F for the front and a B for the back so I don't mix up the pieces. So this is the front piece, and I'm going to be writing this on the wrong sides of the fabric. So this, the pretty pattern part, that's the right side of the fabric, and then the like dull side, like the inside, that's called the wrong side of the fabric. Also, I just realized I did all of the notches wrong. They're supposed to be poking out, not popping in. So that's good. Love that for me. So here's the front, and here is the back. So you just line up the notches, which is how you know where the material is supposed to sit. In theory, these straps are probably supposed to be the same width. They're not. Yeah, these ones aren't either. Maybe they're not supposed to be the same width. So I mean, like, this is kind of what it's gonna look like. It's gonna look hella cute. So what we need to do, I'm going to pin them good sides together. So it would be like, this is the wrong side, and those will be on the outside. And that way the seam is on the inside of your material. It says, with right sides together, stitch front to back at, that is not step one. Front to back at side seams. Ooh, that is for the other one. Right, hold on. Reviews F. Okay, with right sides together, stitch front to back at shoulder seam. Look at me trying to mess it up before we even started. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pin the shoulder seams, or the shoulders together. So like I said, you're supposed to line up the notches. Now, listen, I don't know if I just like suck at tracing things, but these do not match up. So that'll be interesting, but it's literally the same distance on each shoulder, so perhaps it's meant to look like this. I am unsure. But I'm just gonna go ahead and pin these together with the notches lined up. After putting the pieces together, I brought it over to my sewing machine, and with the stitch size set at 1, which is the smallest stitch size, I went ahead and did some forward and back stitches, making sure to back stitch at the beginning and end of each row of stitching to secure the thread in place. If you think that you're gonna mess up and you're gonna have to seam rip it, perhaps go for a slightly larger stitch. A 1 is the smallest my machine goes, which is basically like the tightest and most difficult to pull out with a seam ripper. So just something to keep in mind, especially if you're a beginning sewer, but don't go too loose, otherwise it won't hold well. Okay, I mean, that is a really simple step. Those pieces are sewn together. Voila. So now what you have to do is press the seam flat. So it looks like that on the inside. So I'm just gonna, pressing means ironing, in case y'all didn't know. So I'm just gonna go into my parents' room because that's where the iron lives and press these seams down. All right, so the next step says, now that we have done the shoulder seams, stitch center back seam of neck binding, piece 9, and then press under 3/8 inch or 1 centimeter on long unmarked edge. So we're gonna sew this bit together, and then I guess you fold it this way? Like press under, so I imagine that means like this way, like wrong sides together. It doesn't say. With right sides together, pin binding of neck. Ooh, I honest to God do not know. But what this basically is like a trim around the neckline. So we're gonna experiment. So let me start by sewing these bits together. 3/8 inch is the seam allowance. I think that's literally what we're doing. Yeah, we're hemming this side. Okay, got it, got it. Okay, so I've now stitched this little part together. It's called the binding, apparently, and pressed 1 centimeter of fabric down. Okay, so what we're gonna do is line up with the good pieces facing inward toward each other. We're gonna find this little hem pit piece, and it's gotta stretch all the way around the neck hole, and you're lining up the binding to the edge, I guess. So like this. I guess that makes sense. Okay, so eventually I did figure this out. So basically what you're doing is lining up the edges of the right sides together. It's a little bit confusing to explain, but essentially like you're meeting the tops of both sides together with the good sides of fabric facing each other, because at the end you're going to actually end up rolling this over to create what I know to be called the facing. The binding pinned all the way around the top seam of the shirt. It isn't the perfect fit, but I think this is due to the fabric having meant to be stretchy. So I'm just gonna put some darts at the shoulder spots, at the shoulder seams, and that should resolve the problem. So now let's go and sew. Okay, that took way longer than it probably should have, and also some improvising. So I actually ended up having to add a second piece of fabric around the edging because it just wasn't working the way it was supposed to, because I think just because this isn't a stretchy fabric. So, which means I might have to recut the sleeve parts because I have to do that again for the sleeves, which is going to be the biggest nightmare of my life. But anyway, now I need to roll it and roll the raw hem and sew it on the inside, and it's going to create like a little, you know, like tube sort of situation for a nice clean edge. So I've now pinned all the way around. Actually, I think what this is also called is called a facing. In this pattern they're calling it a binding, but I'm pretty sure this is the same thing as a facing if you're more experienced at sewing. Obviously this is my first sewing pattern outside of ones that I've drafted myself, which it's honestly so weird that I've been able to like make my own clothing and like draw out my own patterns without ever having used one. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping this is gonna look okay. I'm getting a little nervous, but it looks good, I think. So we're gonna just go ahead and sew this all in place now. All in all, this is actually the most time-consuming part of this process of making this shirt, just figuring out how to even do this facing or this binding. But once I did it around the neck, oh my goodness, it was so much easier to do it on the sleeves. It's definitely one of those things that like the more you practice, the better you get, the easier it becomes for you. So if you find this part really difficult, rest assured, so did I, but you can do this and it will get easier with practice. Pretty good. That looks pretty good. I'm actually really happy with how that came out. Cool. Okay. I mean, you can see it's pretty much halfway. We're almost there. So I think now we have to sew down the side seams and then do this process on the sleeves, do a hem at the bottom, and then we're done. Pretty intuitive, actually. It's just taking me forever because these are a lot of new techniques for me. Like, I've never done a facing before, but it looked good. Like, I'm really happy with how that turned out. I also have a tag that I could put in here if I really felt like I needed that in my life. But I'm not sure if I'm gonna actually do that. Right sides together. We're gonna find the ends of the pieces and pin here and just sew down the seam allowance. So basically this is the process of connecting the front piece to the back piece. So we are just pinning everything down the side seams, and then we're going to stitch it up on the seam allowance. This is where it becomes really helpful to have marked the seam allowance with the water-soluble pen. So again, I really do recommend doing that. Don't forget also, so we're doing a front to back stitch, and we are going to be back stitching at the ends. Another thing that I did not do this time around, just because it didn't say in the pattern, is to overlook or to like serge the sides, meaning to like give it a finish. I normally do that when I make my own clothes, so that is something that if I had realized that that wasn't a step in the pattern, I would have done first. Okay, I figured I would do like a first fitting. So this is before I've done the arms and before I've done the bottom hem. And I will say this part is not perfect, but this is my first time ever making like a shirt like this, so I'm not at all mad at how it turned out. It's also a lot more cropped than I anticipated, which is fine because I like a good cropped top, but the pattern does not make it look cropped. So perhaps I don't know, maybe I traced the wrong part of the pattern. Either way, I actually really like how it looks. So yeah, I actually think this is gonna turn out pretty freaking cute. I don't know, it's giving me like Burberry vibes. Cute, very fall. I can't wait to like pair it with something like, maybe not this, might be the wrong color. Well, maybe not. Oof, I think it's gonna look cute. I was also thinking I have enough extra fabric that I can do some like fun embellishments. It might be cute to make like a tiny little like ribbon bow to put here. So we'll have to see. We'll come back to that momentarily, but for now, I'm really happy with how this is turning out. I think it's looking real cute. So I'm just gonna now add the facing on the sleeves and then do the hem, and then we're done. Okay, so we took a brief intermission, so I had to grab dinner with my older brother and the first pumpkin spice drink of the year. Actually, I had a pumpkin spice drink the other day here, like I made it, but like this is the first Starbucks pumpkin spice drink, so like we're really feeling the fall mood. But anyway, so the shirt does not need a zipper, which is really nice. This is the back, this is the front. So now the seam allowance is on the inside. I just need to literally fold, press, and hem. Bada bing, bada boom, we've got ourselves a freaking fall shirt. So I'm gonna go roll the hem. It's a double rolled hem, meaning you just fold it about like a quarter of a centimeter twice, so that way like the raw edge is encased inside, and then you just pin it and check it through the sewing machine, and voila, we got ourselves a shirt. And I think actually next time I make this, I'll probably use the size medium pattern, because this is like a nice oversize, but it is like a nice oversize. So I don't really mind it too much. Also, I was just thinking, so this pattern does call for you to like attach lace at the bottom. I'm not doing that. So I think that is why it is actually shorter than I realized, because you're supposed to add some inches with lace, which I'm not doing. But that also got me thinking, you could totally add like a little peplum if you cropped it a little higher. You could very easily sew just like a rectangle and then put 2 rows of basting stitches and gather it, and then just sew with the right sides together the little peplumy bit if you wanted. So this is like a great pattern for versatility. You can really like play with it, mess with it, make a lot of different designs with it, because it just gives you the basic tank top structure. You could even like open up the middle seam, so you would want it to have like some overlap. So you would want to like maybe make one side a little bit wider and add some buttons and have like a button down shirt. Or you could do buttons in the back, would be super cute. So yeah, that's what we're working with. I'm gonna go roll this and press it and hem it. Alright guys, thanks for coming on this journey with me. So I hope you have enjoyed this process of just seeing how I worked through my first sewing pattern. I'm so pleased with how this shirt came out. I had always known I wanted to put a Peter Pan collar with this tank top once it was done. So this is just a detachable Peter Pan collar that I threw on, and I'm so excited to be wearing this in the fall. It is definitely going to be a go-to shirt for me. And I just think like the possibilities with this particular pattern are so endless. You can make dozens of different types of shirts just with this one pattern. So I think that's really fun and cool. Like I said in the video, you could do sort of like a peplum type of vibe. You could do an even more cropped shirt. You could do a tunic out of this if you just wanted it to be a little bit longer. So yeah, I think that there are endless possibilities with this pattern. It's totally worth it to have like basic patterns in your repertoire if sewing is something that you're interested in. By the way, this is not at all meant to be a tutorial as much as it just is like me recanting my experience of following a pattern for the first time, and it's just something that for me to have later down the line. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you guys want to see more sewing videos, let me know down below. I absolutely loved walking through this, and honestly it was like really motivating. Like sewing is something that I love doing anyway, and I want to get in the habit of making more of my own clothes, but it was just really cool and fun to film this process and to share it with you guys. So if that's something that you guys want to see, let me know. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe. It is totally free, and I'll let you know when I upload new videos, which is every single Monday, and it's every crazy weekend, and they go up on Wednesdays. Also follow me on social media. You guys can see a ton more from me in regards to fashion, my life, everything else over on Instagram. And yeah, don't forget to shop my Etsy shop, where you guys will be able to find scrunchies and headbands made out of this fabric, because I have enough left over to make a select few. So if that is something you guys are interested in, those will probably be up soon. But anyway, love you guys so much. Don't forget, it costs absolutely nothing to be kind, so be nice to one another, register to vote, and I will see you next time. Bye!